one of them has their subsidiary entity in that location, right in that zone of control, in that theater. For King and the Navy, it's Admiral Nimitz. For Marshall and the Army, it's our friend Douglas MacArthur. And in the book Guadalcanal, author Richard Frank writes, quote, "On June 26th, Marshall presented the case for endowing command of the offensive in MacArthur. Acknowledging that simple lines drawn on the map earlier that year were not absolutely controlling, Marshall argued that MacArthur's position and knowledge would enable him best to coordinate Allied efforts. King replied in writing the same day. He began by pointing out that in Europe, where the major forces engaged would be ground troops, King had acceded to Army command. In phrases," Frank writes, "that became progressively less tactful, King stated that naval and amphibious forces predominated in the Pacific, and command should therefore be Navy. In fact, he asserted, the operation, quote, could not be conducted any other way." End quote, Frank continues. In a further slap at the Army and MacArthur, King promised to proceed, quote, "even if no support of the Army forces in the Southwest Pacific is made available," end quote. Underlining this threat, Frank writes, King directed Nimitz on June 27th to prepare for operations on the premise that only Navy and Marine units would be available. Marshall restrained himself from a reply in kind to this provocative missive. Not so MacArthur, who threw one of his more remarkable tantrums of the war. End quote. I remember reading one description of MacArthur that said at times he could be positively Shakespearean. This is the way Ronald H. Spector in Eagle Against the Sun describes this moment of disagreement between the two divas. Quote, "The argument over command rocked the Joint Chiefs of Staff for almost a week. At one point, King warned Marshall that he would direct Nimitz to go ahead with the operation, quote, even if no support of Army forces in the Southwest Pacific is made available, end quote. While MacArthur," Spector writes, declared that the Navy's obstinacy was part of a long-time plot to bring about, quote, this is MacArthur talking, "the complete absorption of the national defense function by the Navy, the Army being relegated to merely base training, garrison, and supply purposes," end quote. He claims to have been party to information back in the Hoover administration that he gleaned secret info on the fact that there was this plot to usurp the Army, and that this is part of another brick in the intolerable wall. It's a little kooky at this level, isn't it? And yet, you see it in so many militaries. Looks like the Japanese